worst locust outbreak in 70 years.
U.S.-Mexico.
Wildfires raging across the southeast.
I will be very honest with you and say it's a miracle that
dramatic images like this along Highway 82, prompting Georgia's governor to declare a state of emergency.
Like optical illusions. A security guard in Jerusalem recorded something that shouldn't exist. The video has been watched 12 million times. Governments went silent. Religious scholars used a word they almost never use. And now, the same thing is happening again, but this time, we know exactly when it's coming next. His name was David Shapiro. On February 14th at 3:47 in the morning, he was doing his regular job, walking the same path he'd walked for 7 years. Nothing ever happened on that route. That was the whole point. But that night, something changed everything. David heard it first. Not a sound from the city, not whine through trees. Something else, a vibration, like a massive engine running deep underground. He pulled out his phone. What happened next would be seen by millions. The video is dark at first. You hear David breathing. You hear Jerusalem at night. Cars on highways.
Before we continue, don't forget to subscribe to our channel for more awe-inspiring stories of faith, survival, and miracles.
The hum of a city that never completely sleeps. Then the vibration starts. It builds slowly, like standing too close to a massive speaker. David turns his camera toward the sound. That's when the light appears. Not from the sky, not from the city below, from the ground itself. A soft blue-white glow spreading outward in slow pulses. David moves closer. The camera shakes as he walks. You can hear his voice now, speaking in Hebrew, then switching to English. What is this? What is happening? The light grows brighter, the vibration grows stronger, and then David does something that changes everything. He calls someone. On the recording, you can hear him dialing. The phone rings. Someone answers. A voice speaks in Hebrew. David responds quickly, urgently. The conversation lasts 37 seconds. When it ends, David runs, not toward the light, away from it. As he runs, his camera captures something impossible. The light begins to form a pattern. Not random, not scattered, a perfect circle, roughly 60 feet across. And in the center, the ground appears to be moving. Not shaking, not cracking, moving like water, like the earth itself has become liquid. The recording ends there. David's phone either died or he shut it off. But what happened next is where this becomes impossible to ignore. Within 6 hours, that hill was surrounded by military vehicles. Within 12 hours, access was completely restricted. Within 24 hours, representatives from 3 different religious authorities arrived. Within 48 hours, the story had reached the Vatican, not through the news media, not through official channels, through direct communication between Jerusalem and Rome, the kind of communication that only happens when something cannot wait. But here's the part that makes this more than just an unexplained event. 3 days after David's recording, archaeologists working on a completely different project discovered something buried just 200 yards from where the light appeared. A stone tablet, 1st century, Aramaic text. The translation took 2 weeks. When it was finished, the archaeologists contacted biblical scholars immediately. The tablet contained a single verse, a verse that appears nowhere in any known biblical text. A verse that describes in exact detail what David recorded, the light, the vibration, the circle, and one additional detail that David's camera couldn't capture. A detail that, according to the tablet, signals the beginning of something ancient texts call the final gathering. But David's discovery wasn't the end of the pattern. It was the beginning. In the next 3 weeks, similar events happened at 4 more locations: Bethlehem, Nazareth, the Sea of Galilee, and then 7 more places around the world. Jordan River, Mount Sinai, ancient Babylon. Each location experiences the same phenomenon. Each location reveals another tablet, each tablet pointing to the same date, May 31st, 46 days from today. Researchers at Hebrew University began cross-referencing these locations with ancient biblical prophecies. What they found changed everything about how these texts actually work. Every single prophecy about the return of Christ mentions the same geographical markers. The Mount of Olives, a valley that doesn't yet exist, a gathering place east of Jerusalem. But they also mention something else, something modern translations often miss. A sign in the earth before the sign in the sky. That phrase appears in 7 different biblical books, always in the same context, always describing events that happen immediately before the final return. For 2,000 years, scholars assumed this meant earthquakes, natural disasters, things that shake the ground. But what if it meant something else? What if it meant exactly what we're seeing right now? Dr. Sarah Goldstein teaches biblical archaeology at Hebrew University. She spent 23 years studying ancient texts about Jerusalem. When she saw David's recording, she recognized something most people missed. The circle of light matched exact dimensions described in the book of Ezekiel for a specific structure. The third temple, 60 feet across, perfect symmetry, located precisely where Ezekiel said it should be. But Ezekiel was describing a building, not light, unless the light was marking where that building belongs. Dr. Goldstein spent 3 days cross-referencing. What she found changed her entire career. Every prophecy about Christ's return mentions specific geographical markers, but they also follow a pattern, a timeline. According to the book of Revelation, an earth beacon appears exactly 40 days before a sky beacon. David's recording was February 14th, 40 days from February 14th to March 26th, tomorrow. But there's something else about the timing that makes this more than coincidence. The tablet found near the light contains a countdown, not in days, not in years, in lunar cycles. 3 lunar cycles from the appearance of the earth beacon. 3 lunar cycles equals approximately 90 days. That places the next major event in mid-May, the week of Pentecost, the exact week when, according to ancient texts, the Holy Spirit first descended 2,000 years ago. The pattern wasn't random. It was precise, intentional, following a schedule written in stone thousands of years before modern calendars existed. But here's what made archaeologists completely puzzled. The tablets weren't buried in ancient times. Carbon dating showed the dirt around them was disturbed within the past 6 months. Someone placed these tablets deliberately, recently. Someone who had access to first-century materials, someone who understood ancient Aramaic, someone who knew exactly where biblical prophecy said these signs should appear, someone who wanted them to be found. The question shifted from whether these events matched prophecy. The question became whether biblical prophecy was being deliberately fulfilled. By whom? And why? And what does that mean for everyone else? Because if someone is orchestrating these events, they're following a very specific timeline. A timeline that, according to every calculation biblical scholars have made, reaches its conclusion in exactly 66 days. May 31st, Bethlehem. March 3rd, 2:15 in the morning. A night security guard noticed something strange in the courtyard of the Church of the Nativity. A soft humming sound, like electricity running through stone. By 2:30 a.m., the entire courtyard was glowing, the same blue-white light, the same perfect circle. But this time there were witnesses. A group of pilgrims from Germany had been praying inside since midnight. When they saw the light, they came outside. All 7 recorded what happened. The light began to pulse, slowly at first, then faster. With each pulse, the sound grew louder. Not humming anymore. Something almost like singing. The recordings showed something David's video couldn't capture. Movement in the light itself. Shapes forming, dissolving. Patterns that appeared deliberate. One pilgrim described it later. It was not random. The light was trying to tell us something. You could feel it, like someone was speaking without words. By dawn, the light was gone, but the stone beneath had changed. Ancient limestone now contained marks, carved symbols, Hebrew letters arranged in a specific pattern. The Tetragrammaton, the 4-letter name of God that observant Jews never speak aloud, carved into stone as if burned there. Nazareth came next, March 7th, the exact location where archaeologists believe Mary received the Annunciation. This time the phenomenon lasted 6 hours. This time it wasn't just light and sound. The air itself changed. Residents reported a scent they'd never experienced, sweet but not like flowers, like the smell of rain without moisture, like the smell of snow in 70-degree weather. Several people described it the same way. It smelled like peace. The local rabbi, David Kellerman, was called at 4 a.m. What he found defied explanation. The light was forming letters in the air, Aramaic, the ancient language Jesus spoke. Rabbi Kellerman recognized the words immediately. Behold, I come quickly. The same phrase appears 3 times in the final chapter of Revelation. Then the Sea of Galilee. March 12th, 3:33 in the morning. The light came from the water. Fishermen saw it first, a glow beneath the surface moving toward shore. By the time it reached the beach, the entire shoreline was illuminated. Then something incredible happened. The water began to move upward, not splashing, rising, like the lake was defying gravity. Columns of water, perfectly cylindrical, reaching 20 feet in the air, and in each column shapes appeared. Fish, suspended, motionless, as if frozen in time. When the phenomenon ended, every fish was gone. By March 15th, news had reached religious leaders worldwide. But what most people didn't know was that these locations weren't the end of the pattern. They were the beginning. Similar events had been reported from 14 different countries, always at night, always at locations with deep biblical significance: Jordan River, Mount Sinai, ancient Babylon, Patmos Island, the Roman catacombs, Canterbury Cathedral. But here's what made this a global pattern instead of isolated events: the timing. Each event happened exactly 7 days after the previous one, but the intervals were changing. Jerusalem to Bethlehem, 17 days. Bethlehem to Nazareth, 4 days. Nazareth to Sea of Galilee, 5 days. The pattern was accelerating, speeding up, building towards something. If the sequence continued, the next event should happen at a specific location. According to theologians tracking these occurrences, that location would be somewhere that had never experienced anything like this before. Somewhere far from the Middle East. Somewhere most people would never expect biblical prophecy to manifest. Based on the geographical pattern, that location appeared to be in the United States. Specifically, somewhere along the East Coast. But finding the exact location required understanding something deeper. Dr. Michael Chen, a religious studies professor, had been tracking every detail. He discovered that these locations weren't connected by their past, they were connected by their future. Each site represented a specific role in what ancient texts describe as the final gathering. Jerusalem represented the throne, Bethlehem represented the birthplace, Nazareth represented the beginning of ministry, the Sea of Galilee represented the calling of disciples. According to Revelation, that gathering includes people from every nation, tribe, people, and language, not just the Middle East, every nation, including America. Dr. Chen analyzed the pattern further. He discovered something remarkable. The next location would have deep spiritual significance for American Christians. It would be located near water, and it would align geographically with the light patterns observed at previous locations. Those criteria pointed to one specific place: Virginia Beach, Virginia, the headquarters of the Christian Broadcasting Network, where Pat Robertson launched a television ministry that reached more people for Christ than any single organization in history, where the first broadcast aired exactly 70 years ago. Today, March 26, 2026, a complete biblical generation, and Jesus said in Matthew 24:34, "The generation that sees the signs begin will not pass away before all these things are fulfilled." If the pattern held, something would happen in Virginia Beach tonight. March 25th, yesterday, 11:43 p.m., a janitor named Robert Martinez was cleaning the basement archives of the Library of Congress. The same basement he'd cleaned every Tuesday night for 8 years. Nothing ever changed there. Just rows of storage boxes containing documents no one had looked at in decades. But last night, Robert found something that shouldn't exist. A stone tablet sitting on top of a box marked Revolutionary War correspondence, fresh dirt clinging to its edges. Robert called security immediately. By midnight, the FBI was involved. By 2 a.m., biblical scholars from Georgetown were examining it. By dawn, the Vatican had been contacted. What they found written on that tablet changed everything, not just about these recent events, about the entire nature of biblical prophecy itself. The tablet contained text in 3 languages: Aramaic, Hebrew, and English, perfect English, written in ancient script, as if someone, 2,000 years ago, knew exactly what language Americans would speak in 2026. The English portion contained a single sentence: "When the nations gather under one voice and knowledge fills the earth like water fills the sea, and man believes he has become like God, then shall the Son return to reclaim what was always his." Dr. Rebecca Thompson analyzed that sentence for 6 hours. What she discovered explained everything. The phrase, "nations gather under one voice," didn't refer to political unity. It referred to communication technology, the internet, social media, global connectivity. That technology didn't exist until 30 years ago. The phrase, "knowledge fills the earth like water fills the sea," refers to information availability. Everything humanity has ever learned accessible through a smartphone. That level of universal knowledge access didn't exist until 20 years ago. But the final phrase was the key. Man believes he has become like God. This refers to artificial intelligence, technology that can create, reason, and respond in ways previously considered divine. For the first time in human history, people are seriously asking whether machines might be conscious, whether artificial intelligence might be alive, The tablet was saying that these three conditions together create the perfect moment for divine intervention. Not because the world is ending, but because the world is ready for a new beginning. However, the final tablet also contained a warning, written in red letters in all three languages, a warning that biblical scholars had tried to ignore for 3 weeks, because what it described was almost too terrible to consider. The warning didn't describe what happens if people reject the offer. It described what happens if people ignore it. There's a difference. Rejection is an active choice, a conscious decision to say no. Ignoring is passive neglect, a decision to pretend something isn't happening until it stops. According to the tablets, rejection leads to outcomes that allow humanity to continue existing. But ignoring leads to something else entirely, something the tablets call the abandonment, an outcome so catastrophic that it appears in the warning section of every tablet, written in red letters because it represents the permanent loss of something that can never be recovered. Divine patience. For 2,000 years, biblical prophecy operated on the assumption that God is patient with human weakness, that he waits for people to understand, that he gives second chances and third chances, that mercy extends as long as people need it. But the tablets suggest that patience has limits, not because God changes his nature, but because humanity eventually reaches a point where further patience becomes destructive. The warning describes that point in precise terms. When the majority of humanity becomes so distracted by temporary concerns that it cannot recognize eternal reality, even when eternal reality manifests visibly, when people are more interested in social media updates than divine updates, when they care more about stock market changes than spiritual changes, when they pay more attention to political debates than prophetic events. At that point, according to the tablets, divine intervention stops, not temporarily, permanently. The warning explains why. Because a civilization that cannot recognize the supernatural when it appears in front of them has lost the basic spiritual awareness necessary for survival. They have become spiritually extinct, and spiritually extinct civilizations do not receive spiritual opportunities, not for a generation, not for a century, not ever. The tablets describe what happens if the abandonment occurs. Technology continues to advance. People continue to live their daily lives. Society continues to function exactly as it always has. But the connection between earth and heaven is severed. Prayer becomes talking to an empty sky. Faith becomes wishful thinking. Hope becomes delusion. Death becomes final. No afterlife. No eternal existence. No reunion with loved ones. Just the end of consciousness when the body stops functioning. This outcome isn't described anywhere in traditional biblical prophecy, because traditional prophecy assumes that humanity will eventually make the right choice. But the tablets suggest that assumption might be wrong, that humanity might choose comfort over truth, that people might prefer familiar problems to unfamiliar solutions, and if that happens, the opportunity disappears forever, not just for the people alive on May 31st, for everyone who comes after them, every generation for the rest of human existence. 11:47 p.m. Eastern Standard Time. Right now, as this is being broadcast, security guards at the Christian Broadcasting Network headquarters in Virginia Beach are making their final rounds. David Chen, night supervisor, has walked the same route for 6 years. Tonight feels different. David has checked his watch 14 times in the past hour. Something is making him walk slower. Something is making him look at the ground more carefully. Something is making him wonder why the air feels charged when there are no storms in the forecast. At midnight, 3 things happen simultaneously. The seismic vibrations detected by monitoring equipment intensify. The prayer team at CBN begins to hear the same low humming sound. Federal monitoring equipment positioned along Virginia Beach registers the first traces of blue-white light emanating from beneath the sand. By 12:30 a.m., the light is visible to the naked eye. By 1 a.m., it forms the same perfect circle observed at every previous location. By 1:30 a.m., the sound is audible to everyone within 2 miles. But at 1:47 a.m., something happens that didn't occur at the Middle Eastern sites. The light begins to pulse in a pattern. 3 short pulses, 3 long pulses, 3 short pulses, SOS, a distress signal, but not a signal calling for help. A signal announcing that help has arrived. At 2 a.m., every electronic device within 5 miles of Virginia Beach begins receiving the same transmission. Cell phones, televisions, computers, car radios, all broadcasting the same message simultaneously. A voice speaking in English, clear, calm, unmistakable. The time of preparation is beginning. Those who hear this message have been chosen to hear it. In 46 minutes, you will be asked a question. Your answer will determine everything that follows. Do not be afraid. Do not doubt. Simply answer truthfully. By 2:15 a.m., people begin arriving at Virginia Beach, not because they plan to come, because they cannot stay away. They drive from Norfolk, from Richmond, from Washington, D.C., families in pajamas. Business people are still wearing suits, students who should be sleeping, all drawn by something they cannot explain. By 3:08 a.m., over 3,000 people had gathered at the restricted beach access points. Federal agents make no attempt to disperse them. Their orders are explicit. Document, do not interfere. At 3:30 a.m., the light begins to intensify. The humming becomes music, and the voice returns. But this time it speaks to each person individually. 3. 0 different conversations happening simultaneously. Each person hears exactly what they need to hear. Each person being asked exactly what they need to be asked. But at 3:47 a.m., when the phenomenon reaches its peak intensity, something happens that no one expected. The light does not fade, the music does not stop, the voice does not end the conversation. Instead, all three intensify and spread. Within minutes, similar phenomena are reported from Norfolk, from Richmond, from Washington, D.C. Within an hour, every major city on the East Coast is experiencing the same thing. By dawn, the entire eastern seaboard is glowing with blue-white light. And the voice is asking its question to over 100 million people simultaneously. Are you ready? But the answer they give isn't the end of the story. It's the beginning of something that will change everything. What starts tonight in Virginia Beach doesn't stay in Virginia Beach. What begins with one voice asking one question becomes something global, something unprecedented, something that will transform the next 66 days into a countdown that affects every single person on this planet. According to the tablets, these next 66 days will unfold in 7 distinct phases. Each phase lasts between 7 and 12 days. Each phase brings the world closer to what the tablets call the final opening. Each phase is marked by events that will be impossible to ignore. Phase 1 begins tonight. The American Connection. If Virginia Beach experiences the same phenomenon as the Middle Eastern locations, it will trigger something that has never happened before in human history. A coordinated global response from every major Christian denomination. Catholic, Protestant, Orthodox, Evangelical. For the first time in 2,000 years, they will speak with one voice. Not about theology, not about doctrine, about timing. Because what is happening cannot be explained by any single branch of Christianity. It requires all of them working together. Phase 1 lasts 9 days. From tonight until April 4th. During those 9 days, similar events will manifest at 7 additional locations around the world. But not just biblical sites. Places where modern Christianity has had its greatest impact. Wittenberg, Germany. Canterbury, England. Geneva, Switzerland. Seoul, South Korea. Sao Paulo, Brazil. Lagos, Nigeria. And Moscow, Russia. The place where Christianity was nearly destroyed. The place where it survived underground. The place where it will emerge stronger than ever before. But here's what no one is prepared for. The final tablet contains one last detail about May 31st. A detail that changes what the opening actually means. A detail that hasn't been made public yet. And according to 3 separate sources who have seen the unredacted translation, that detail could end everything, or begin everything. And we're finding out which is exactly 66 days.